Hey from Texas, it's Lindy Fulford. Tonight I'm going to talk about a sermon that I listened to last week by Pastor Stephen Furtick. Now I really love to listen to Stephen Furtick, about as much as I love to listen to my pastor, which is Donnie Smith, and Donnie is the pastor of the Fellowship, Round Rock, and Hutto campuses. So if you are looking for a church home, let me just give you those recommendations because he is fantastic. And here's why I like both Donnie and I like Stephen Furtick, is because they make the Bible, for me, come to life. It's not just about reading something out of the Bible and then moving on. It's really taking what's in the Bible and relating it to everyday life. So I figured since I'd done my series on marriage and how marriage counseling saved our marriage and the color code and the love language, this one just really fit in perfectly, and it's called The Prison of Offense. I'm just going to give you a few of the highlights that I got from that sermon because they were really, really good. And then in my blog, I'll also post a link to his actual sermon, so in case you want to go and listen to it all. The very first point that I want to call out is the reason it's so hard for you to stay happy is because it's so easy for you to become offended. You guys, that is so true. And that is not just in marriage. That is in anything. Sometimes the reason we can't stay happy is because every little thing offends us. It doesn't matter how big or how small, we get offended by it. Instead of water off a duck's back, we get offended by it, and then it ruins our happiness. So sometimes you gotta learn not to be offended. This sermon talks about the plank in your eye, and I'm sure a lot of you have heard this sermon about being able to take the plank out of your own eye before, casting it on someone else. So he talks about how the enemy starts in a small way, in a really small way, right? It's not like, for the most part, when you start to see your marriage decline, it usually doesn't just happen overnight. You wake up and you go, oh my goodness, things are awful. No, usually it's small things that compound over time, and next thing you know, everything you look back on and you go, oh my God, that is awful. That's horrible. How did we get here? Every plank is made up of a lot of specks, right? So little specks. It's not usually just one tiny speck. Like I said, it's compounded over time. And next thing you know, it's this big, huge plank in your eye. The closer the relationship, the greater the opportunity for two things. The closer your relationship to each other is the greater opportunity for intimacy, which we all love, but it's also a greater opportunity for offense. Because for some reason, when we get closer, then every little thing is just pointed out. We just notice every little thing that we like and every little thing that we don't like. It takes 1 to forgive and 2 to reconcile. You guys, this one hit home for me because it's so true. It wouldn't have mattered when Scott and I were going through what we were going through, if I wanted to forgive him for everything, that wouldn't have made our relationship better because it took 2 of us to reconcile that relationship. It happens one offense at a time, as we've already said. Before marriage, I thought this was funny. Before marriage, opposites attract. After marriage, opposites attack. Okay, I thought that was really funny. So if we're going to get back to where we were, we have to learn to drop it. You guys, there are just some things. It's like picking your battle. I tell Scott this all the time. We talk about this all the time, especially with our kids, right? You got to pick your battle. Some things are not worth fighting for, especially when you come into a marriage and you're both so different. If you come into a marriage, you've got to pick your battles on which things are worth fighting for and which things you've just kind of got to let go, because not only are you letting some things go, they're probably letting some things go too that really annoy them. All right. This one's really good too. I love this. If God dropped the charges against you, what offense is there in the universe that you can't drop? Because I'm forgiven, I can forgive. And it's really hard, you guys. Sometimes it is hard to forgive. Forgive and forget is what they always say. I'm frozen. I can see myself frozen. What happened? Frozen? trying it again. Oh, sorry, just kidding. I don't even know where it ended. It froze. So I'm just going to keep going. The last one I said, oh, going live. It's always so much fun. You just never know what's going to happen. If God dropped the charges against you, what offense is there in the universe that you can't drop? Because I'm forgiven, I can forgive. And I truly believe that. But I also think it's really hard. I think forgiveness for me, sometimes it's just a hard thing, you guys. And they always say forgive and forget. And to me, sometimes that's easier said than done. And last but not least, offense is an event. That's something that someone has hurt you in a certain way. You know, offense is done to you, whereas offended is a decision. And that takes us back to the very first thing. The reason it's so hard for you to stay happy is because it's so easy for you to become offended. At some point, you've got to learn to just let things roll off your back and move on and move forward. And don't let those things that people do to you bring you down. You've got to be the bigger person. You've got to step up, and then you've got to work together to figure it out. So I hope you learned something from this. I will post his whole sermon. Like I said, I love to listen to Furtick. And I will post his whole sermon on my blog. And let me know if you learned anything from it, because he's fantastic. If you like, he gets kind of loud. So, all right, you guys, I'll catch you on the other side.